Morning, everybody. Peter Boyle's in for the fellows. They'll be back on Monday, and I'll be back tomorrow morning at 9. 710 KNUS, Denver's talk station. Great weather, really, 60 degrees and 62 degrees, and we're staying warm. And briefly, still in a second, we're going to Professor Smith. Then Keith Ball is on the show. And here's the setup, and then we'll go to Professor Smith. The country turns 250 years old this year. We now are, this is January 2nd, 2026. 4th of July celebration this year is going to be big. So I came up with a question, which I thought would be good civil conversation. Will the country last another 250? And boom, it blew up. Say good morning and welcome back. You want to bring him up, please? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, he is my true favorite from Baylor University, historian and Professor David Smith. Happy New Year, Professor, and welcome back to the show.
Happy New Year, Peter. It's great to talk to you again.
You too. I mean, when I ginned up this question, I said to Adam, I said, we have not had Professor Smith on the show, and I said he'd be perfect if he's willing to work on January the 2nd.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anytime you call, I'm ready.
Take a second and talk about yourself and Baylor and what your job is so people know who you are.
I'm an American historian here at Baylor University. I'm what's called a senior lecturer, so I do a lot of teaching. I write about military history. I write about naval history and maritime history, but also some cultural history, too. I get to write about pretty much whatever I want to write about.
And that's a great gig.
It's a great gig. It really is. You know, I'm not on what's called a tenure track, so I don't have to lock myself into this one little, small zone of expertise. And I do a show on the NPR station here every week on art and culture and history, and then I write about George Dewey and Alfred Thayer Mahan. So it's great.
I'm a big fan of this man, everybody. I think I've read most of his books. I first met him when you did the Audie Murphy book. And
that's been 10 years now.
Wow. And he is that great. So, thinking that I had this intellectually stimulating call for open lines, it's turned into a battleground already, even saying, why would you even ask the question? I think it's legit. This is the best one, and I got a ton of responses. This says, hell no, hell no. The rate in which the world is globalizing, and he kind of goes on from there. Jump ball question. The country's 250 years old this year. Professor Smith, I know nobody likes to predict, but what do you see in the future? Will we last another 250 or 100? I get people saying we're not going to last 5.
Yeah,
it is all yours.
I was thinking about this not too long ago, actually. Will we last another 100 years? I remember in 1976 for the bicentennial, people said, will we last another 100 years? And I don't know, the world changes a lot. I mean, think about how much the world has changed in 250 years. When the United States formed, right, when we declared independence from Great Britain, we were the only attempt at a republic going. I mean, we were really it. And we were really at the cutting edge of a movement. And this is what somebody like Thomas Paine really intuited. The United States, when it formed, was at the cutting edge of a movement that was trending in the direction of republics. And you had, a good run for republics. I don't know if we're going to move into another period of governmental organization, a different period of organization being the dominant form of government in the world. There will always be people, there will always be conglomerations, there will always be governmental forms, but I don't know if the republic form is going to last another 250 years.
Wow. I mean, I read quite a bit to prep for this, and we go into these, and this is one of those things that history professors like to do, compare and contrast.
Right.
The fall of the Roman Empire. And I read Gibbon and read all the, I should say all is not a good thing for me to say, but it's staggering the analysis between the two, between us and the Romans, and then the idea that all empires fail, and we became an empire after 1945. So what do we do with that?
Yeah, I would, and you and I have talked about this.
Right.
I would say we became an empire before 1945. We just didn't realize it. I
Fair
think
enough.
we became an empire in 1900, 1901.
Okay.
But
And tell the audience why you believe that. And I think
oh,
you're more right than I am.
right, because that's when we wound up having colonies, right? We had a colony in Puerto Rico. We had a colony in the Philippines,
Mm-hmm.
right? We had a colony in sort of a colony-ish. And now that I say that, colony is not the right word because we were never going to colonize the Philippines. They're just overseas possessions, and that turned us into something other than a coherent republic because we governed the Philippines without letting the Philippines govern themselves, and that's the point at which we became something other than an insular republic. We became a sort of an imperial republic.
Was it Douglas MacArthur's father that was?
Yeah, Douglas MacArthur's father, the uncreatively named Arthur MacArthur,
Yeah.
was the third military commander of the Philippines. He was the one that that sort of crushed the rebellion in the Philippines.
And you always read about those kinds of things, and they simply didn't, as many other nations will follow, didn't want us there.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they wanted us out, and even if you get this feeling that they thought, Emilio Aguinaldo, right, the Philippine rebels, they thought that even if we do a bad job of governing, it's still self-government. And the Americans should have been able to relate to that in 1900 because we said the same thing to the British.
Our little brown brothers, right? Wasn't that the line?
Right, that's the line. I think, wasn't it Rudyard Kipling who sort of popularized that phrase?
Well, I thought it was, who was the president? Was it McKinley or someone who said these are our little brown brothers and they were going to Christianize them?
Yeah.
Yeah, without realizing that they had been Christians under the Spaniards.
Right.
Remember that line?
They've been Christians for 300 years.
Yeah, they were going to Christianize them, and then the GIs would say they may be his little brown brother, but ... Yeah, no.
Right. And the other thing that was cooking in 1900, 1901 was that the United States was becoming a great power, which is a fundamentally different thing in a global context. But we sort of, and you can look at Woodrow Wilson and see this,
Yes.
we sort of didn't realize that we were a global power and that we thought that we could take or leave global influence as much as we wanted to. And you get this really interesting dynamic between somebody like Theodore Roosevelt, who says we're a global power now and we have to act like one, and Wilson, who says we're not a global power and we don't have to act like one.
But they did. But he did.
Yeah. But he did eventually, right? He came around to it. And then in the 20s, we decided, well, we're not a global power after all. And then, and then FDR comes in and says we need to be, but I don't have the political capital to spend on it in the 1930s. Yeah, it's back and forth, and it's only after 1945 that we say, okay, we're a global power and we're going to act like one from now on. And now you get the people who say we don't have to act like one because we're not one, but we are one still.
Indeed. Our guest, the one and only Professor David Smith, Baylor University, Peter Boyle, 710 KNUS in the new year. We had a conversation earlier on with a caller that then after 1945, actually before that, because as you point out in the Philippines, we prop up governments. And basically we prop up some of the most corrupt, despotic humans, and it's because we're taking on the Cold War. Is that fair, Professor?
That's exactly fair. And I think the further we get from the Cold War, the more we have the chance to sort of do a dispassionate analysis about it and our role in it and our behavior in it. And we got some things wrong in the Cold War, even though we got the big picture right. The Soviet Union and the United States were these I guess you could say bipolar power centers, and we got a lot of things right compared to the Soviet Union. But we did a lot of things wrong because we looked at the world as simply yes or no, black or white, bipolar, and it made for bad geostrategic decision making.
Yeah, there was and the people like Syngman Rhee in Korea, You know, they put the Shah back on the throne. We go around the world militarily and industrially, keeping these people there. And why are they there? They're there because they are a buffer. The guy that they brought to East Germany, Walter Ulbricht, they found these characters. They put Kim on the throne in Korea, the original Kim. The Soviets did that.
Think about how the world would have been different if the United States in the 1950s would have embraced nationalistic movements around the globe instead of trying to crush them.
Yes. And
it would have been totally different.
I'm a big fan of Jumbo Kenyatta and the Uhuru movement. And I've read all these, I shouldn't say, well, I say all again, please, but this comes out of the black African soldiers that soldiered for the British Empire for freedom for the for the Europeans, only coming back to Kenya to having the British Army in charge and the white guys in charge in Nairobi, and they're going, well, what was this all about? You know, we went off and fought, and now we still can't be ourselves.
Yeah, the American people had that same experience, right? You know, African Americans go off and fight in World War I and World War II, and they come back and say, wait a minute, something's wrong here.
Something's wrong here. And they started the Uhuru movement, and that caught fire. And all these places, Vietnam is get rid of the French, the Japanese fight, and all this stuff. And nobody in this country gets it. Or I shouldn't say the people in power don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked about Cuba before. Remember,
many times.
Cuba could have been such an ally if we had just, embraced their nationalistic movement. And I don't know. It's a difficult thing to look back on and make sense of.
Yeah, the Castro people. I mean, that aside, but there were these despotic people that placed on the throne. I mean, they really were the Shah. I mean, right now, this morning, there's demonstrations are in Tehran, and Donald Trump's saber rattling at the mullahs. And I said something on the radio show. Can't this country stay out of a war for 20 minutes? Professor, seriously. I mean,
yeah, I understand that, And then I think, well, it goes back to the people who say, we shouldn't be the global policeman, et cetera, et cetera. But, a great power benefits from stability. And a great power has a vested interest in keeping the world stable. So I think that's sort of how great powers get pulled into littler conflicts. They don't have an obvious relationship to them. The British, when they were the great power ordering the world, they didn't shy away from it. And I'm not saying we should get into everything, but the reason that it happens is because we're a great power and our interest is in world stability, and we're one of the few powers that can actually influence world stability.
But it brings down Britain, too, doing that, being the empire.
Exactly, yeah. You have to know how to do it, and you have to know when not to do it. And the United States has never known when not to do anything.
The argument that when Winston Churchill gets to Yalta, and then obviously to Tehran, to Potsdam, he's pushed aside. They don't deal with him anymore. FDR and Stalin are the ones that are doing all the work. They know that, or they believe that Churchill's there to try and save the empire. And at Yalta especially, right? Yeah. And so,
which is the same thing that the British were trying to do at Munich in 1938, right? Yeah. Make a deal with Hitler so that the British can keep India.
Yes, Sarah, this is a text message. Did he, meaning you, just say that both of you agree that we should have been with Cuba, the communist Cuba? No, we didn't say that.
No.
There were people there that wanted to get rid of the dictators who were not communist and not Marxist and not revolutionaries. They were small d Democrats. Yeah. And what support did Eisenhower, or for that matter, Truman, give them? No, nothing. They allowed the despots, and they allowed organized crime went to Cuba, and the rest is history. So, no, not to the texture. No, that's absolutely not what's being said. So, if I could bring you back, 250 years old this year.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do? Is there another 250 ahead of us, Professor?
I don't know. I mean, the nice thing about being a historian is you don't have to guess about the future. You just have to guess about the past.
True.
Think about how different the United States. It's interesting because we're saying, okay, this is our 250th anniversary. This is the 250th anniversary of independence being declared from Great Britain. It's not the 250th independence anniversary of the government of the United States. And there's a difference there, right? I mean, the United States government in 1777, 1780 was a lot different from the government under the Constitution. The Constitution is the one that's been kicking along here for so long, and that's the one that's curious. Can the Constitution last another 250 years? Is an interesting question.
Great question. Oh boy, I wish I'd have written the question down that way, because I believe, it's just personal belief, that inch by inch, step by step. Remember Niagara Falls? They remember that routine. The Stooges did it.
The Three Stooges.
Yes,
yeah.
are my faves. I tell you, a cool book to read is, and my partner's reading it now. There's a book entitled Bud and Lou, and Tommy Thompson wrote it. It's old. It's old in terms of publishing, but it's about how teams survive, and why teams fail. And he jackets it Bud and Lou, Abbott and Costello, which was terrible failure. Terrible. They ended up not even talking, and one would send their aide to talk to his aide to say, and they're making movies that way, and they despise each other.
I didn't know that.
And
I had no idea.
Yeah, it was awful. And then Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin was the other example that he gives of what happens to teams. And then he switches over and he writes about Laurel and Hardy and why they survived all of those years. And I think it was Stan Laurel lived in San Francisco, and Oliver Hardy lived in San Francisco. Stan Laurel lived in L.A., and they worked for Hal Roach. And in San Francisco, the guy loved the opera, fine arts, fine dining, was loyal, loved his wife. The guy in L.A., the track, women, he.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't talk. They had no conversations until Hal Roach called them. And then they came, loved each other, came together, and did those, all the great comedy that they did. And then they'd go back to their homes and stay away from each other. The same thing with the Stooges were in that as well. And they're Horowitzes. That's where Mo Howard comes from, and Curly Howard. Their last name is Horowitz. And the oldest brother is Mo. And it's much like The Act. Mo Howard did all the work. He did the scripts. He did contracts. He did negotiations. And the other guys, Curly would go someplace, and Larry Fine went to the track like like showgirls, blew the money, but they would come together, and Mo did all the hard work. He did all the heavy lifting. They banged out the stuff. It's a great book about why things work.
Really interesting.
It's called Bud and Lou, and my partner's reading it right now. If you're going to do a team, read that and how it works and how it doesn't work. But it's it's showbiz, and Jerry and Dean, and finally Dean just hated him, walked off.
Wow.
Yeah, and so but the Stooges one is the one that's really interesting in how they worked, and
yeah, very much.
And I like all of us loved the Stooges when we were kids. We all were Stooges.
We could relate.
Oh, I still do. I tell my grandson, spread out. So Having said all of that,
back to the Constitution.
I mean, I think that stuff's getting whittled away. I think it's getting, we're losing rights. We're not maintaining the line. Do you think that's true?
Probably so, to a certain extent. There's a growing sense that rights. Wait, let me start over with that. There seems to be a growing sense regarding rights that it's a zero-sum game, and that if somebody else is gaining rights, you must be losing them. And I think that's the wrong way of looking at something like human rights, as something that is expandable rather than competable, right? If you're looking at an in-group and an out-group and them fighting each other, I think it's probably the wrong way to think about human rights. And I think that's what somebody like Thomas Paine and Thomas Jefferson understood.
Is Thomas Paine the American Trotsky?
Wow. That, I think I understand why you said that.
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting question.
How about this? Because we're going up on the break. I'll put you on hold. The question on the other side. It's Thomas Paine, the American Trotsky. It's Friday, the first show that we're doing in 2026. Country's 250 years old. Will we survive? 303-696-1971. Open lines in the next hour. And then Keith Ball is on the show. And the book, Terry the Tramp, The Life and Times of a One Percenter, a Biker. And we're back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. We'll do it again. 710 KNUS. I'm Peter Boyle. Stay right here. It's going to be a good day. 60 will be the high.
Your 710 5-day forecast for early Friday, we're keeping it mostly cloudy. Morning temperatures will be in the upper 30s. Despite the clouds, Friday's highs right around 60 once again. Turning clear mid-30s heading into the weekend with dry, sunny conditions. Saturday and Sunday, highs low to mid-60s with clear nights and lows upper 30s. Into the work week, we'll keep it mostly sunny and dry. Low 60s Monday, upper 50s Tuesday. Meteorologist Don Watzel in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Morning again, everyone. It's a Friday, the second morning of January, but here's the kick. 2026, 710 KNUS. Thank you for being here. Weather is really nice outside. And what we're talking about, and I like gin this one up, the country is now 250 years old after we crossed the line, and will we last? And our guest is just the best. David Smith, he's professor of history at Baylor University, a longtime friend. He's on the show with us as oftentimes as we can. I got to read, after all these beat-up text messaging, Professor, here's one that makes your heart sing. Peter, listening to you and Professor Smith discuss history, and especially American history, is a real treat. I always learn something. Great guest.
Aw.
Yeah, see?
That's wonderful. I mean, that's why we do what we do, right?
Yeah.
We want people to understand stuff.
And it says, signed, Professor Smith's mom. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, it's a legit text. So as we're kicking things around. I always get the professor with me, and I get to answer. I get to ask questions. Thomas Paine, Winter Sunshine Soldiers and Winter Patriots, or whatever that line was, and Winter Soldiers.
Yeah.
Winter Soldiers.
Yeah, these are the times that try men's
Yes,
souls.
yes.
The Sunshine Patriot will fade away, or something like that, and those who stand through this crisis will be the ones who
Yes.
can shape the future.
And then they ran him out. Is he the American Trotsky? Stalin runs Trotsky out. What about Thomas Paine? What happened?
You know, Thomas Paine wanted to. I've been thinking about this through the break. Thomas Paine was one of the ones who really was animated by the belief that the ideals of the American Revolution were universal. They weren't just American. They were universal ideals. Human rights are human rights because of humans, right? And he wanted to go back to Europe and see if these ideas could increase liberty in England. And he went back to the UK after the American Revolution, not because he got booted out, but because he wanted to sort of test the universality of the ideas that he saw Washington and Jefferson putting into play. And that's how he drifted over into France when the French Revolution started in '89. And you know, you're thinking about Trotsky, and I've been thinking about that same thing. And I think you can say there's a parallel between Trotsky and Paine in that they both were animated by the conviction that a revolution based on let me back up a little bit. The revolution could be universalized and shouldn't just sit right here. That didn't come out right. Paine wasn't booted out like Trotsky was. Paine didn't have a falling out with the American people until quite a bit later in his career.
Is it true that no one knows where Paine is buried, or that he? That he's.
It is true, you know, and I've been in New York City and I've seen the plaque on the building where he died.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the building. It's not the same building. It's like Thomas Paine died in a building that once stood here. But I don't think anybody knows exactly where he died, where he's buried. I think there was a hunt for his bones not long ago. I should know this better because I'm a big Paine fan.
Yeah, I am too. Was he a spark? I mean, you know, Trotsky is the spark, but what was he the spark for the revolution? He was brilliant, and he certainly took him on, as we say, and
he was the popularizer of it.
Oh, yeah.
He was the one who took these academic, intellectual ideas and brought them down to a level that human beings in the mass could understand, right? I mean, his pamphlet Common Sense in 1776, that's the thing that made Americans realize that independence has to be the goal, because liberty and monarchy are fundamentally incompatible. You cannot have liberty if one person has all the power. And if the Americans want to have liberty, they've got to cut the ties. They can't stay in the British Empire.
I I read Lenin, and Lenin was a great pamphleteer, and as was these revolutionaries in our country, and they wrote kind of the same stuff. Lenin has, written about the same things. No monarchs, that kind of thing. Give me somebody that knows what they want. He did on Death to Liberalism, which was an interest because that could have traveled with other people as well. But he said, I don't. This is Lenin now, not. And he said, liberals don't know what they want, which was a great line. And he said, give me a good Marxist, or give me a monarch. He said, monarchs know what they want. He said, we know what we want, but in the middle, nobody seems to know what they want. And great sense. So
many people's ideas can sort of be a little bit mushy and ill-formed. And if you have somebody like Paine and Jefferson and Washington who can speak with a clarity and say, this is what we think, and if you think this, you have to stand by it and not just ideas count, right?
Yeah.
And if you're going to believe this, you've got to act a certain way. If you believe in human rights, then you have to think certain things.
That's right. You can't not. So I was working late last night, like probably about 7 o'clock for me, but so here I made a list of medieval England, Glorious Revolution, British Empire, France, Venetian Republic, Roman Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Russian Empire, USSR, modern Russia, Spain, and then Portugal. They're all failures, empires that failed. And I also didn't add, the Mandarin Chinese or the Mings and the Qing and modern China, and so it's kind of a list of, and it might be I don't know, it's certainly not conclusive, but these are failure empires. And do you see parallels between the Roman Empire and our country right now?
Well, a short answer, yes, but the long answer is yes, but.
Yeah.
There's a parallel in that you've got a government that expands and grows, and then the initial ideas that animated it are not as compatible with the current conditions, and then you get some sort of collapse or change. I guess, let me ask you, are you a rise and fall kind of person, or are you a cycles of history kind of person?
Cycles of history. Okay,
so more the Chinese model that history comes and goes, and there's okay.
Am I out of line?
No, I don't think so. Well, I think that a linear rise and fall can be a little bit misleading. As you were asking me the question about comparing this to other empires, think about France, right? France has had a series of republics. What are we on now, like the fifth republic?
I think so, yes.
That might be more like what the future of the United States is going to be, that you've got this same sort of basic entity, but you have these shifting governments that come and go in a cyclical way as crisis turns into stasis.
But the French have all come home too, and they're the big ideological fight in France today is Islam. They really are into one, but as they all came home, we were having a conversation about, I'll show you where I go, about Edith Piaf, who I'm a big Edith Piaf fan. And then I really am, and all the politics of Edith Piaf. But when the Paras and the Legion got kicked out of what was French Indochina, they went to Algeria.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And they were lost again, and it was de Gaulle pulls them out of Algeria, and that's the time of the Jackal, Carlos the Jackal, that allegedly was going to kill Charles de Gaulle. But when the Legion marched out, they marched out with Edith Piaf singing, or her song, "We Regret Nothing." and then they have to come back. They come back to France, and I don't know. I don't know if my uncle had a great line about the French. He was a World War II guy. He said they had the flags of every nation in their basement, and it depended on who was going down the street where they go out and wave their flags. The German flags they had, whoever was, and they collaborated. They were the collaborators. But full circle.
I think one of the problems is that the United States doesn't have it's sort of different. I mean, there's not a clear way in which the United States is going to follow any other pattern that has existed.
Agreed.
Except in the broadest kind of outlines.
Well, the idea of giving bread in circuses, which Gibbon plays out. I'm watching this stuff with the Somalis in Minnesota, and I don't think it's really the fault of the Somalis. I think it's they gamed the system and they saw it and they just took them off. But this is the kind of stuff that I'm watching and I'm thinking, are we going to pull this off? Serious question.
I've not kept up with that too much. I've had some other stuff that has sort of eaten up my bandwidth, but so I'm not really up on that situation with the Somalis in Minnesota. But the bread and circuses, the idea that you can distract the people by giving them something that takes them away from being focused on ideas, whether it's give them a villain to hate or give them a distraction, right? Governing and being a self-governing republic is hard to do because it requires people to understand stuff. And if contemporary life has told me anything, it's that understanding stuff is hard, and a lot of people don't want to do it.
True.
And that makes our job kind of tough, right?
Yeah. It's
because if you really want to understand how all this works, it's not easy. You've got to sit down and you've got to really work and understand it. And most people don't want it. They just want a simple answer.
Yes. And
sorry to get on the soapbox.
No. It's true, though. Our guest, Professor Smith from Baylor University, history professor. I love him. He's on the show as often as we can get him. What is the likelihood that this country exists in 100 years? The likelihood.
When you ask me that, do you mean in the same form as it is now?
All right,
of this power sharing between states and a federal government, that sort of thing? The United States is going to exist, but I don't know exactly what it will look like. I think it'll be largely the same in 50 years.
What will it be called in 100 years? I wrote these questions down to myself, and how long? Well, again, the United States of America right now, today, are we in a precarious moment, and what will be determined, for instance, in the elections this year, or in the election, what will it look like in 3 or 4 years? Who wins? One of my indicators in New York City yesterday swore in a socialist Muslim who was sworn in on the Quran. He is a socialist and democratic socialist. In the heart, this is the heart of capitalism, Wall Street, New York City. And I came up with this bizarre thing that hit me in the head. The day that he wins the mayoral position in New York is the day that Dick Cheney died.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Did Dick Cheney die that day?
That day. And, the Dark Prince, Dick Cheney. He really is. He really was. But talk to that. What do you make of the mayoral election and the outcome in New York?
It's intriguing. It's very interesting. It's when you think about democratic socialism and the ideas that are behind it, and it's not it's not Soviet Union communism.
No.
It's just the notion that the government is going to work for the masses rather than a small number of people who hold power. I think that if Louis XVI could have had a democratic socialist prime minister, the French Revolution might not have happened.
He would have kept his head, right?
Yeah, I think that you can go down these avenues that close down thought, that you think that a democratic socialist is bad for the system. But if you believe in human rights, and if you believe in a universality of benefits, maybe a democratic socialist could correct some of the negative tendencies of corrupting individualism.
One of the things that struck me is when the expansion of the framers, and you're infinitely better than I am, they say to you, we grant you life, liberty, and pursuit. They don't say 3 hots and a cot. And so this idea now that you have a constitutional right to housing. I've heard that from the socialists and many the so-called straight Democrats. Respond to that when we come back after this break. Our guest, the one, the only, Professor David Smith from Baylor University. Here we go. It's a Friday morning, January 2nd, 2026. 710 KNUS. Now, the United States will celebrate its 250th anniversary, say that, anniversary, 4th of July, 2026. And it's a milestone, July 4th, 2026, 250 years since the Declaration of Independence. And the anniversary is seen as a chance. Our radio show this morning, I thought we would talk about challenges and nation's evolving identity and will it survive? And it's turned into something really interesting this morning. Our guest, and we'll go to open lines next hour, David Smith, Baylor University professor of history. And when we broke away, it is yours, David, if you would, please.
Yeah, I really like the way you asked the question that we stopped with. You said, is there a constitutional right to housing?
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that you and I should probably talk through sometime when we have another hour, because the short answer is no, there's not a constitutional right to housing because the word housing isn't in the Constitution. But there are different kinds of rights. There are human rights, there are civil rights, and there are political rights. And the Constitution tends to address political rights.
Yes.
But when you go back to the Declaration of Independence, it addresses human rights because it says that all humans are created with fundamental rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it says that governments are created among men to protect human rights. And the difficulty is when you start to, and I don't mean you, but when one starts to sort of elide human rights and civil rights and political rights just under sort of an umbrella of just blanket rights, right? You have, if you believe in human rights, everybody who's a human has the same ones that you do. If you believe in political rights, the rights that you have depend on the political order under which you live.
But if you're going to give somebody a house, Professor, on the back of their rights, where do you get the dough to give them the house?
Exactly, that's the problem. The right place to start that discussion is you start from human rights. You don't start from political rights and work backwards. You say, does everyone as a human have the right to have clean air? For instance, does everyone as a human have a right to be educated, have a right to know things?
But we do have the door. The door's open for education. People quit it. They drop out. I mean, all the different things that go with that.
You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Well, we always said you can lead a horse to water, but you know how those things smell when they get wet. That's the lead the horse to water, my answer.
So you want the horse to be wet.
Yeah, and you lead the horse to water, and you know how they smell when they get wet. But then I look around, and all this expansion, I'm telling you, watch this in New York. I think it's going to be an interesting run. They're starting out with free buses and free child care and everything, but those kinds of rights obviously get expanded. And we have a mayor in this city that they've tapped the city out, giving homeless guys some place to sleep. And these are people that are certainly capable of working, and we look the other way. It's the same model, I think, of the Chinese and the opium dens that the United States and the British supplied the Chinese that destroyed their empire. So
I hope we get a chance to talk about the whole concept of rights. I mean, one of the questions could be, can we use the political order to make something basic like housing more attainable to more people?
Well, the 50-year mortgage. That's pretty crazy, but it's being offered up, or being talked about. The problem is you got to take from somebody to give to somebody, and in the end of Karl Marx, and I like so many of us, Marx says from each and to each. That's his only definition of what's going to happen, and so it goes.
And you get this situation where you look around the order of the economic order, and you think there's a lot of money out here.
You bet.
And fewer and fewer people have money, and is that it? And I'm not coming down one way or the other. I'm just saying a legitimate question is: can you build a healthy order on this monopolization of capital?
I have a running gag. I chose the wrong parents. You know, I wish we got a minute. I need to tell you. I mean, you are a gift to me in radio shows. And
oh man, you're a gift to me.
Well, how about this? Maybe in 2 weeks we do a Saturday show, and if you can clear the deck, we'll come back with us and we'll talk about rights, because that's running through New York right now. You watch. I mean, I don't know.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You watch what happens. I mean, next time we'll talk. But what are you teaching this year? Real quick, what are your classes?
Real quick, I'm doing 2 sections of the U.S. in Global Perspective, which is a core history class.
All right.
I'm doing upper division U.S. military history since the Civil War, and I'm doing a graduate readings class with a grad student.
Whew. Thank you, sir. I wish I did. Well, take care of yourself. And
I can't wait to talk to you again.
We'll do
Peter.
it again, Professor. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, everybody. Open lines on the other side. Will the country, will we last another? 710 KNUS, I'm Peter Boyles. Hang on.